Chapter 1. The Shattered Crown. The crystal chandeliers of the Silvercrest estate cast dancing shadows across the marble floor. Each flicker of light, a cruel reminder of how far Mira Ashford had fallen. She stood at the edge of the grand ballroom, her borrowed gown, a delicate champagne silk that had seen better days, feeling more like a costume than clothing. Around her, the elite of human society twirled and laughed, their jewelry worth more than everything Mira had owned in her entire life. "Is that the Ashford girl?" A woman's voice drifted over the music, deliberately loud enough to carry. "I heard her father gambled away their entire fortune before he died. Left her with nothing but debts and shame." Mira's fingers tightened around her glass of untouched champagne. She had learned long ago that responding only made things worse. Better to be invisible, to endure the whispers and pointed stares until she could escape this nightmare. She was only here because her late mother's sister, Aunt Cordelia, had insisted. "You need to find a suitable match, dear," she'd said, her tone suggesting Mira was livestock at auction. "Before you become too old and your options disappear entirely." At 24, Mira was hardly ancient, but in Aunt Cordelia's world, where marriages were business transactions and love was a commodity, time was running out. "Ladies and gentlemen," the master of ceremonies announced, his voice booming across the ballroom, "we are honored tonight by the presence of distinguished guests from the Northern Territories." A ripple of excitement moved through the crowd. The Northern Territories were mysterious, their people rarely mingling with Southern society. Rumors spoke of vast wilderness, ancient bloodlines, and traditions that predated modern civilization itself. Mira looked toward the entrance, curiosity momentarily overwhelming her misery. 3 men entered, and the atmosphere in the room shifted like a storm front moving in. They were tall, impossibly tall, and moved with a predatory grace that made the other men in the room look soft by comparison. But it was the man in the center who commanded every eye. He was devastating. Dark hair fell to his shoulders, and even from across the room, Mira could see his eyes were an unusual shade, amber, like honey held up to sunlight. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than most people's annual income, but he wore it with the carelessness of someone who didn't notice such things. There was something wild about him, something that didn't quite fit within the gilded cage of the ballroom. "That's Kieran Blackthorne," someone whispered nearby. "The Alpha King of the Northern Packs." Mira frowned at the strange title. Alpha King? What did that even mean? "They say he controls all the land from the Frost Mountains to the Whispering Forest," another voice added. "Richer than gods, and twice as dangerous." Kieran Blackthorne's gaze swept across the ballroom with barely concealed disinterest. He looked like a wolf forced to play at being human, and he was doing a terrible job of hiding his impatience. Then his eyes found Mira. The connection was instant and inexplicable. His amber gaze locked onto hers, and Mira felt something shift in her chest. A pull, a recognition, a sense of falling even though her feet remained firmly planted on the floor. The noise of the ballroom faded to a distant hum. He started moving toward her. Panic and something else, something warm and electric, flooded through Mira's veins. She set down her glass with trembling hands, suddenly desperate to escape before, well, a cruel, familiar voice cut through her thoughts. If it isn't poor little Mira, playing dress-up with her betters. Mira's stomach dropped as Vivian Ashcroft appeared beside her, flanked by 2 other women from prominent families. Vivian had been tormenting her since childhood, and time had only sharpened her cruelty. "That gown," Vivian continued, her voice pitched to Carrie. "Didn't your mother wear that to a ball 15 years ago? How sentimental." Heat flooded Mira's cheeks. Yes, it had been her mother's. She'd altered it herself, staying up 3 nights to make it fit, to make it presentable. It was all she had. "At least she's trying," one of Vivian's companions said with false sympathy, "though I'm not sure what she hopes to accomplish. Who would want damaged goods?" The words hit like a physical blow. Mira knew what they were referring to, the scandal that had destroyed her father, the whispers that had followed her family for years, the insinuations that she somehow shared in his sins. "I was just leaving," Mira said quietly, gathering what remained of her dignity. "Oh, don't run off yet," Vivian said, reaching out to grab Mira's arm. The movement was sharp, deliberate. The champagne glass Vivian had been holding tipped forward, spilling its contents down the front of Mira's gown. Gasps echoed around them. The cold liquid soaked through the delicate silk, ruining it instantly. "Oh no," Vivian said, her voice dripping with false concern. "How clumsy of me." But then again, that dress was already a disaster, wasn't it? Laughter rippled through the nearby crowd. Mira stood frozen, champagne dripping from her gown, humiliation burning through every nerve. Tears threatened, but she refused to let them fall. She wouldn't give Vivian that satisfaction. "I believe," a deep voice said from directly behind her, "that the lady requires assistance." Mira turned to find Kieran Blackthorne standing so close, she could feel the heat radiating from him. Up close, he was even more overwhelming, taller than any man she'd ever met, with features that seemed carved from stone, and those impossible amber eyes that held hers with unsettling intensity. "This doesn't concern you, Mr. Blackthorne," Vivian said, though her voice had lost some of its confidence. Kieran didn't even glance at her. Instead, he did something that made the entire ballroom fall silent. He removed his jacket and draped it around Mira's shoulders, the fine wool enveloping her in warmth, and a scent that made her head spin. Pine forests and wood smoke, and something wild and indefinable. Then, to her absolute shock, he lowered himself to one knee before her. The great Kieran Blackthorne, Alpha King, kneeling in the middle of the Silvercrest ballroom. "Forgive the presumption," he said, his voice low and meant only for her. "But I find myself unable to stand by while anyone is treated with such disrespect." His amber eyes searched hers, and Mira saw something there that stole her breath. Recognition, hunger, and something that looked almost like relief, particularly not you. "You don't even know me," Mira whispered. A slow, devastating smile crossed his face. "Don't I?" And in that moment, with the entire ballroom watching in stunned silence, Mira felt her carefully constructed world tilt on its axis. Something about this man, this stranger who knelt before her like she was royalty instead of a disgraced nobody, called to a part of her she hadn't known existed. Something ancient. Something wild. Something that whispered one impossible word. Mine. Chapter 2. The escape Mira's heart hammered against her ribs as Kieran rose to his full, imposing height. His hand remained extended toward her, an invitation and a challenge wrapped into one gesture. Around them, the ballroom had gone deathly quiet, hundreds of eyes fixed on the impossible scene unfolding before them. "Come with me," Kieran said, his voice a low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her bones. It wasn't quite a command, but it wasn't quite a request either. Something in between. A statement of inevitability. I don't understand," Mira managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why would you—" "Because staying here would be a waste of both our time," he interrupted, his amber eyes never leaving hers. There was an intensity in his gaze that made her feel exposed, as if he could see through all the careful walls she'd built around herself. "And because I've been searching Fing overtly threatening in his expression, but something primal and dangerous lurked just beneath the surface. I suggest," Kieran said, his tone glacial, "that you concern yourself with your own affairs, and perhaps learn some are you for a very long time." The words should have frightened her. They should have sent her running in the opposite direction. Instead, they ignited something deep in her chest, a warmth that spread through her like wildfire. "Mr. Blackthorne," Vivian's sharp voice cut through the moment. "Surely you're not serious about this. Kieran finally turned to look at Vivian, and Mira watched the other woman actually take a step backward. There was noth manners before the next social gathering. Cruelty, I've found, is the refuge of the deeply insecure. Vivian's face flushed crimson, but she said nothing. No one said anything. The power radiating from Kieran Blackthorne was palpable, suffocating. He commanded the room without effort, without even trying. He turned back to Mira, and his expression softened infinitesimally. "Please," he said, and this time it was definitely a request. "Let me get you out of here." Every rational thought in Mira's head screamed at her to refuse. She didn't know this man. He was a stranger, however attractive, however strangely familiar he felt. Going anywhere with him was reckless, foolish, potentially dangerous. But when she looked into those amber eyes, rationality dissolved like morning mist. She placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong, and Mira felt that same electric jolt she'd experienced when their eyes first met. Kieran's pupils dilated slightly, and his grip tightened almost imperceptibly. Then he was guiding her through the crowd, which parted before them like water before a ship's bow. Mira caught a glimpse of Aunt Cordelia's shocked face as they passed, but Kieran moved too quickly for anyone to intercept them. Within moments, they were through the ballroom doors and into the cool evening air of the estate gardens. The temperature had dropped, and Mira shivered despite Kieran's jacket wrapped around her shoulders. He noticed immediately, his jaw tightening. "There's a car waiting," he said, gesturing toward a sleek black vehicle idling at the edge of the circular drive. One of the men who'd entered with Kieran, dark-haired with sharp, watchful eyes, stood beside it. "I can't just leave," Mira protested weakly, even as her feet kept moving forward. "My aunt will worry. My things will be retrieved and delivered to you," Kieran assured her, "along with a message that you're perfectly safe and in good hands." He paused, studying her face in the moonlight. "Unless you'd prefer to return to that viper's nest? Face more of their petty cruelties?" Mira thought of Vivian's smirk, of the laughter, of the champagne soaking through her mother's dress. She thought of Aunt Cordelia's disappointed sighs and the endless parade of suitable men who looked at her like she was a problem to be solved. "No," she said quietly. "I don't want to go back." Something fierce and satisfied flashed in Kieran's eyes. "Good." The man by the car opened the rear door as they approached. Up close, Mira could see he shared some of Kieran's unusual features. That same predatory grace, those same too sharp eyes. They weren't quite the same shade as Kieran's amber, but they held a similar otherworldly quality. "This is Marcus, my second," Kieran said, as he helped Mira into the car, "and my oldest friend." Marcus inclined his head, his expression unreadable. "My lady, I'm not—" Mira started to protest, but Kieran had already slid in beside her, his large frame taking up most of the back seat. Marcus closed the door and moved around to the driver's seat. As the car pulled away from the Silvercrest estate, Mira watched the lights recede through the rear window. She was leaving behind everything familiar, everything safe, and she barely knew the man sitting beside her. "Where are we going?" she asked, finally finding her voice. "Somewhere you can breathe," Kieran replied. He'd turned to study her, his gaze traveling over her face like he was memorizing every detail. Somewhere without their judgment and poison. But why? The question burst from her. "Why did you do that? Why me?" Kieran was silent for a long moment, and Mira watched emotions flicker across his face. Conflict, hunger, something that might have been fear. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. "Because the moment I saw you, something inside me recognized you. Something that's been dormant for 33 years suddenly woke up and demanded I protect you, claim you, keep you safe." He ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. "I know how that sounds. I know you have no reason to trust me, but I swear to you, Mira Ashford, I will never let anyone hurt you again." The conviction in his voice stole her breath. So did the fact that he knew her full name without her having told him. "How did you know my name?" she asked. A ghost of a smile crossed his lips. "I made it my business to know everything about you the moment our eyes met across that ballroom." He shifted slightly closer, and Mira could feel the heat radiating from him. "Your father was Robert Ashford, once a respected merchant before his business partner betrayed him. Your mother died when you were 16. You've been living with your aunt for the past 3 years, working as a seamstress to pay off your father's debts." Mira's throat tightened. "You investigated me in the span of 20 minutes?" "No," Kieran said softly. "I had Marcus make some discreet inquiries, but most of what I know—" He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "Most of it I simply feel. Your sadness, your strength, the way you've been fighting just to survive in a world that's treated you with nothing but cruelty." That's not possible, Mira whispered, even though something deep inside her insisted it was, that she felt it too. This strange, inexplicable connection to a man she'd just met. No, Kieran agreed, his amber eyes holding hers in the dim interior of the car. It shouldn't be, but here we are anyway. The car wound through darkened streets, leaving the city behind for increasingly rural roads. Mira knew she should be frightened. Instead, wrapped in Kieran's jacket with his scent surrounding her, she felt safer than she had in years. Even if she couldn't explain why. Even if nothing about this made any sense. "What are you?" she asked finally, the question escaping before she could stop it. Kieran's expression turned guarded. "What do you think I am?" "I think," Mira said slowly, "that you're not quite human. Neither is Marcus. And I think there's a reason people call you Alpha King instead of just Mr. Blackthorne." A low, rumbling sound came from Kieran's chest, almost like a growl, but not quite. "You're perceptive. Am I in danger?" "Not from me," he said immediately with absolute certainty. "Never from me. You're the safest you've ever been, Mira. I promise you that." And somehow, impossibly, she believed him. Chapter 3. The Haven in the Woods. The car climbed steadily into the hills, leaving behind the manicured estates and gaslit streets of the city. Mira watched through the window as civilization gave way to wilderness. Ancient oak trees standing sentinel along winding roads, their branches creating a canopy overhead that blocked out the stars. She should have been terrified. Every instinct of self-preservation should have been screaming at her to demand Marcus turn the car around, to leap from the vehicle if necessary. Instead, a strange calm had settled over her, punctuated only by her acute awareness of Kieran beside her. He hadn't moved away, hadn't put any distance between them. His thigh pressed against hers in the confined space, a point of heat that seemed to radiate through her entire body. Every breath she took was filled with his scent, that intoxicating mixture of pine and smoke and something wild that made her head spin. "Tell me about your mother," Kieran said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. Mira turned to look at him, surprised by the question. "Why? Because I want to know you," he said simply. "Everything about you, and because you loved her. I can see it in the way you wore her dress tonight, the way you treasured something that others mocked." Tears pricked at Mira's eyes, but she blinked them away. She was beautiful, kind. She used to say that true elegance came from how you treated others, not what you wore, or how much money you had. A sad smile crossed her lips. The world disagreed with her philosophy. "The world is often wrong," Kieran said softly. His hand found hers in the darkness between them, his fingers intertwining with hers like they'd done this 1,000 times before. "She sounds remarkable." She was. Mira's voice caught. "She got sick when I was 15. Something in her lungs. The doctors said the air in the city didn't agree with her, that she needed to go somewhere with clean air, away from the smoke and fog. But we couldn't afford to leave, couldn't afford the treatments." She paused, the old grief rising up. "She died anyway. My father never recovered. He started gambling, making bad investments, trusting the wrong people." Kieran's grip on her hand tightened. "I'm sorry." "Everyone is," Mira said, more bitterly than she intended. "Sorry doesn't change anything." "No," Kieran agreed. "But understanding does. And I understand loss, Mira. I understand what it feels like to watch the foundations of your world crumble and know you're powerless to stop it." She studied his profile in the darkness. "What did you lose?" His jaw tightened. "My parents, my sister, my entire pack." He stopped abruptly, as if he'd said too much. "Pack?" Mira repeated, her heart beginning to race. Marcus spoke for the first time from the driver's seat. "We're approaching the property line, Alpha." Kieran's eyes never left Mira's face. "Yes, Pack. We're almost there. You'll understand soon enough." The car turned onto a narrow private road, and within minutes, a house emerged from the forest. But house was too small a word for what Mira saw. It was a lodge, massive timber beams and stone, with warm light glowing from floor-to-ceiling windows. The structure seemed to grow naturally from the landscape, as if it had always been there, as if the forest had simply grown up around it. Marcus brought the car to a smooth stop at the front entrance. Before Mira could reach for the door handle, Kieran was already out and opening her door, offering his hand. She took it, stepping out into air so clean and crisp it made her lungs ache after years of city living. "This is your home?" she asked, staring up at the lodge. "One of them," Kieran replied, "but it's the one I prefer. The one that feels most like—" He trailed off, searching for words. "Most like me." The massive front door opened, and a woman appeared, tall, elegant, with silver hair despite appearing no older than 40. Her eyes, Mira noticed immediately, were the same unusual amber as Kieran's. "So," the woman said, her gaze sweeping over Mira with unconcealed interest, "this is her." "Mira," Kieran said. "This is Elena. She manages the household and serves as my advisor. Elena, Mira Ashford." Elena descended the steps with inhuman grace, and Mira felt that same otherness she'd sensed in Kieran and Marcus. "Welcome, child," Elena said, her voice warm despite her piercing scrutiny. "You must be exhausted. And that dress, what happened?" "A petty act of cruelty," Kieran said, his voice hardening. "Which has been addressed." Elena's eyebrows rose. "I see. Well, come inside. We'll get you something clean and dry and some food. You look half-starved." Mira wanted to protest, to insist she was fine, but her stomach chose that moment to growl audibly. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, too nervous about the ball to manage more than tea in the afternoon. Elena's expression softened. "Come, dear. Let's take care of you." As they entered the lodge, Mira felt her breath catch. The interior was even more stunning than the exterior. Soaring ceilings, exposed beams, a massive stone fireplace where flames crackled and danced. But it was the walls that captured her attention. They were covered in paintings and tapestries depicting wolves. Dozens of them, hundreds perhaps, in every size and pose, running through forests, howling at moons, watching from shadowed glens. "You like wolves," she said, the observation sounding absurd even to her own ears, given the obsessive quantity of wolf imagery. Kieran stood close behind her, so close she could feel his breath against her hair. "You could say that." "Alpha," Marcus said quietly from near the door. "The pack is requesting an audience. They know you've brought her here." Something complicated crossed Kieran's face. "Tell them I'll address them in the morning. Tonight Mira needs rest, not interrogation." "They're concerned," Marcus began. "I said morning," Kieran repeated, and there was steel in his voice that brooked no argument. "And Marcus, make sure they understand she's under my personal protection. Anyone who frightens her or makes her uncomfortable will answer to me." Marcus bowed his head in deference. "Of course, Alpha." Elena had already disappeared down a hallway, and she returned now with an armful of clothing. "These should fit," she said, handing them to Mira. "They belong to—" She glanced at Kieran, who gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. "They should fit," she finished simply. "I'll show you to your room," Kieran said, gesturing toward a grand staircase that curved upward into the second floor. Mira followed him up, acutely aware of his presence behind her, of the way his hand hovered near the small of her back without quite touching. The stairs opened onto a landing with multiple doors branching off a central hallway. Kieran led her to one and opened it, stepping back to let her enter first. The room took her breath away. It was enormous, with a 4-poster bed draped in soft fabrics, more floor-to-ceiling windows looking out into the forest, and a fireplace already crackling with warmth. A private bathroom was visible through an open door, and Mira could see a clawfoot tub that looked like something from a dream. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's not enough," Kieran countered. He moved to the fireplace, adjusting the logs though they clearly didn't need it. His shoulders were tense, his movements almost agitated. "Mira, I need you to understand something." "What?" She set the borrowed clothes on a nearby chair, watching him carefully. He turned to face her, and the raw emotion in his eyes made her heart stutter. "I brought you here because I couldn't bear to leave you in that place, surrounded by people who can't see what you are. But I also brought you here because—" He dragged a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. Because I'm being selfish. Because now that I've found you, I don't think I can let you go. Found me? Mira repeated. Kieran, you're not making sense. I know, he said roughly. And I'm sorry. Tomorrow I'll explain everything. Tomorrow you'll learn what I am, what we all are here. But tonight... He crossed the distance between them in 2 long strides, stopping just inches away. Tonight, I just need you to trust me a little longer. Can you do that? Mira looked up at him, at this impossibly handsome, impossibly mysterious man who'd swept into her life like a storm. Every rational thought told her this was madness, but her heart, her traitorous, foolish heart, insisted otherwise. Yes, she breathed. I can trust you. The smile that crossed his face was devastating. Without another word, he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek for just a moment. Then he stepped back, moving toward the door. Sleep, Mira, he said softly. Tomorrow changes everything. And then he was gone, the door clicking shut behind him, leaving Mira alone in the beautiful room with her racing heart and the certainty that nothing in her life would ever be the same again. Chapter 4. Midnight secrets. Mira couldn't sleep. She'd bathed in the enormous clawfoot tub, washing away the champagne and humiliation of the evening. The clothes Elena had provided fit perfectly, soft sleeping pants, and a shirt that smelled of lavender and something else, something that made her chest ache though she couldn't identify why. Now she lay in the massive bed, staring at the ceiling while moonlight streamed through the windows. The forest outside was alive with sounds, rustling leaves, distant bird calls, and something else. Something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Howling. It was far away, echoing through the trees, but unmistakable. Wolves, multiple wolves. Their voices rising and falling in an eerie harmony that was both beautiful and terrifying. Mira threw back the covers and moved to the window. The forest stretched endlessly before her, bathed in silver moonlight. And there, in the clearing below the lodge, she saw them, shadows moving between the trees. Large shadows, far too large to be normal wolves. They circled the property like sentinels, their movements coordinated, purposeful. As she watched, one of them, massive with midnight black fur, stopped and looked directly up at her window. Its eyes glowed amber in the darkness. Mira's breath caught. Those eyes. She knew those eyes. A soft knock at her door made her jump. She turned, heart pounding. Yes? It's Elena, came the woman's voice. May I come in? Mira opened the door to find Elena carrying a tea tray. The older woman smiled gently. I thought you might have trouble sleeping. New places, strange circumstances. Her gaze flicked to the window. Strange sounds. Those wolves, Mira said carefully. Are they normal? Elena set down the tray and poured 2 cups of tea with practiced ease. That depends on your definition of normal. She handed one to Mira. Chamomile and honey. My own blend. It will help calm your nerves. Mira accepted the cup but didn't drink, watching Elena carefully. You all keep speaking in riddles. Kieran, Marcus, you. Like you're all sharing some secret that I'm not privy to. That's because we are, Elena said simply. She settled into one of the chairs near the fireplace, gesturing for Mira to join her. Though the secret won't remain one much longer, Kieran intends to tell you everything tomorrow. Then tell me now, Mira said, surprising herself with her boldness. I can't sleep anyway, and I'm tired of being kept in the dark. Elena studied her for a long moment. It's not my place. This is Kieran's truth to share. But I will tell you this. What you're about to learn will challenge everything you thought you knew about the world. About what's possible. She paused, her amber eyes reflecting the firelight. About yourself. About myself? Mira's hand trembled slightly, making the teacup rattle. What does any of this have to do with me? Everything, Elena said softly. Kieran has been searching for 33 years. We all thought it was impossible, that the old stories were just myths meant to give us hope. But then he walked into that ballroom tonight and... She smiled, something knowing and sad in her expression. And found exactly what he's been missing. The howling rose again, closer this time. Mira set down her cup and moved back to the window. The wolves had moved into the clearing now, clearly visible in the moonlight. There were at least a dozen of them, all impossibly large, all moving with that same unnatural intelligence. "They're not regular wolves," Mira whispered. "No," Elena confirmed, coming to stand beside her. "They're not. They're people." It wasn't a question. Somehow, impossibly, Mira knew. All the pieces clicked into place. The strange titles, the otherworldly grace, the amber eyes, the talk of packs. The way Kieran had looked at her like he'd been searching for something precious. "Yes," Elena said. "We call ourselves shifters, though you might know us from human legends as werewolves. We are both, human and wolf, two souls in one body." Mira should have laughed. Should have called Elena mad and demanded to be taken back to the city immediately. But she'd known, hadn't she? Some part of her had recognized the truth the moment she looked into Kieran's eyes. "The Black Wolf," Mira said. "The largest one? That's Kieran. Yes, he's restless tonight. Concerned about you, though he'd never admit it." Elena's expression grew serious. "He's also keeping the others at bay. Some of the pack are concerned about your presence here. Humans and shifters don't mix, typically. It's too dangerous for both sides." "Then why am I here?" Mira turned to face Elena fully. "Why did he bring me?" "What am I to him?" Elena's eyes softened with something like sympathy. "That's his story to tell, child. But know this, Kieran Blackthorne is a good man, despite what he carries. He would never harm you. In fact, I believe he would die before allowing any harm to come to you. You keep saying that like it should make sense to me. Like I should understand why a man I just met would feel that way. In time you will," Elena promised. She moved toward the door, then paused. "One more thing, Mira. When Kieran tells you the truth tomorrow, try to listen with your heart, not just your head. Some things can't be rationalized. They can only be felt." After Elena left, Mira stood at the window for a long time, watching the wolves. Watching Kieran. Even from this distance, she could feel his presence. Like a magnetic pull drawing her toward something she didn't understand. The black wolf raised its head and howled, a long, mournful sound that echoed through the valley, and something inside Mira's chest resonated in response, like an answering call she couldn't voice. She pressed her hand against the cool glass, and far below, the wolf's amber eyes fixed on her window once more. For a heartbeat, they simply looked at each other, woman and wolf, human and shifter, two souls suspended in the moonlight. Then other wolves emerged from the forest. 3 of them, smaller than Kieran but still massive. They approached him, their body language submissive, and Mira watched as Kieran seemed to communicate with them through gesture and posture alone. After a moment, they retreated back into the trees, the pack leader protecting his territory. Protecting her. Mira finally forced herself away from the window and back to bed. She drank Elena's tea, feeling warmth spread through her limbs, and finally, sleep began to claim her. Her last conscious thought was of amber eyes and the strange, impossible certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be. When Mira woke, sunlight was streaming through the windows, and the smell of coffee was drifting up from somewhere below. She sat up, momentarily disoriented, before the events of the previous night came flooding back. The ball. Kieran. The lodge. The wolves. Werewolves. She dressed quickly in the clothes Elena had left, dark jeans and a soft green sweater that felt like cashmere against her skin. When she opened her bedroom door, she found a note on the floor. "Join me for breakfast in the garden when you're ready. We have much to discuss." Mira followed the sounds and smells downstairs, where a member of the household staff, another person with those telltale amber eyes, directed her through the main room and out onto a stone terrace. The garden was breathtaking. Wildflowers grew in carefully maintained chaos, and ancient trees provided dappled shade. A table had been set with fresh fruit, pastries, coffee, and what looked like a feast meant for a dozen people. Kieran stood at the edge of the terrace, looking out at the forest. He wore simple clothes, dark jeans and a gray Henley that did nothing to hide the powerful lines of his body. His hair was still slightly damp, as if he'd recently showered. He turned as he heard her approach, and the intensity in his gaze nearly stopped her in her tracks. "Mira," he said, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. Did you sleep well? Eventually, she replied, moving closer. After I watched you and your pack circle the house all night. His expression shifted. Surprise, concern, and something that might have been shame. You saw, I saw, she confirmed. And Elena told me. Not everything, but enough. Kieran closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, they held a vulnerability that made her heart ache. I wanted to tell you myself. I wanted to tell me that you're a werewolf, Mira finished. That everyone here is? That's why they call you Alpha King? Yes, he said simply. Then, to her surprise, he smiled, a small, self-deprecating expression. I'd rehearsed a much better speech. Something eloquent that wouldn't terrify you. I'm not terrified, Mira said, and realized it was true. I should be, shouldn't I? But I'm not. Kieran moved closer, his amber eyes searching her face. No, you shouldn't be afraid, not of me. Never of me, he gestured to the table. Will you sit? There's something else I need to tell you. Something that explains everything. Chapter 5. The Truth of Fated Souls. Mira sat, accepting the coffee Kieran poured for her with hands that were steadier than she expected. He took the chair across from her, but immediately seemed to reconsider, moving to the one beside her instead. Close, but not crowding. Within reach, but respecting her space. I don't know how much Elena told you about our world, he began, his voice careful, measured. That you're shifters, that you can become wolves, that you live in packs with alphas. Mira wrapped her hands around the warm mug. That humans and shifters typically don't mix. Kieran nodded slowly. All true, but there's more to it than that. Our world operates on rules that humans don't have, ancient laws written into our very blood. He paused, seeming to gather his thoughts. One of those laws concerns fated mates. Mira's heart began to beat faster. Fated mates? Every shifter has one perfect match somewhere in the world. One soul that calls to theirs across any distance, any obstacle. When we find that person, we know instantly, undeniably. His amber eyes held hers. It's not a choice, Mira. It's not something we control. It simply is. The garden suddenly felt too small, the air too thin. And you think I don't think, Kieran interrupted gently. I know. The moment I saw you last night, everything inside me recognized you. My wolf recognized you. Every instinct I possess screamed that you were mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to... He stopped abruptly, jaw tightening. You're my fated mate, Mira. The one I've been waiting for my entire life. Mira set down her coffee cup before she could drop it. That's impossible, is it? Kieran leaned forward, his intensity palpable. Is it really? You felt something too, didn't you? When our eyes met across that ballroom? Tell me you didn't feel the pull, the recognition. Tell me you can explain why you trusted me enough to leave with a complete stranger. Why you're sitting here now having breakfast with a man who just told you he turns into a wolf. She couldn't. God help her. She couldn't explain any of it. This is insane, she whispered. Yes, he agreed. Completely. And I'm sorry. Sorry that fate decided to throw this at you without warning. Sorry that you didn't get a choice in any of this. But I won't lie to you, Mira. I can't. What does it mean? She asked, her voice barely audible. Being fated mates. What does that mean for me? Kieran was quiet for a long moment, conflict evident in every line of his body. Traditionally, it would mean you'd become part of my pack, my Luna, my mate in every sense of the word. You'd live here, in this world, bound to me for the rest of our lives. Bound, Mira repeated. Like I wouldn't have a choice. Pain flashed across his face. No, you always have a choice, always. The mate bond. It pulls us together, makes us want to be near each other, but it doesn't remove your free will. You can walk away. You can refuse the bond. His hands clenched into fists on the table. Even if it would destroy me to let you go. Something in his raw honesty cracked the defensive wall Mira had been trying to build. Why me? She asked. I'm nobody. I have nothing to offer an Alpha King. I'm human. I'm broke. You're everything, Kieran said fiercely. He reached out, then stopped himself, his hand hovering between them. May I? Mira nodded, not trusting her voice. He took her hand in his, and that electric current passed between them again. Stronger now, undeniable. "You're strong," he said softly. "Strong enough to survive losing everyone you loved and still keep fighting. You're kind. You wore your mother's dress not because you couldn't afford another, but because it kept her close to you. You're brave. You walked away from that ballroom with a stranger because something inside you knew you were meant for more than the cruelty of that world." Tears burned at the back of Mira's eyes. "You barely know me." "I know you here," he said, pressing his free hand to his chest. "My wolf knows you, and I want to know everything else. Every thought, every dream, every part of you." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "But only if you'll let me." "This is too fast," Mira protested weakly. "Yesterday I was just trying to survive. Today you're telling me I'm destined to be with you forever?" "I know," Kieran said. "And if you need time, I'll give it to you. If you need space, I'll give you that too. Even though every instinct I have screams at me to stay close." "But Mira—" He lifted her hand, pressing it against his chest where she could feel his heart pounding. "Feel that? That's what you do to me. That's what the mate bond does. It makes everything more intense, more real, more alive." Mira could feel it, his heartbeat racing beneath her palm, the heat of his skin through his shirt, the way his breathing had gone slightly uneven, and she felt her own body responding, her own heart matching his rhythm. "I don't understand any of this," she admitted. "You don't have to." "Not yet." Kieran's voice dropped lower, more intimate. "Just stay. Give me a chance to show you this world, to show you what we could have together. If at the end of it you want to leave, I'll take you anywhere you want to go. I'll give you money to start over, protection from anyone who would hurt you. But please, Mira, don't run just because you're scared." "I'm not scared," she said automatically, then laughed shakily. "Okay, I'm terrified, but not of you." "Then what?" Mira looked down at their joined hands. "Of wanting this, of wanting you. What if the bond is just manipulating me, making me feel things that aren't real?" Kieran gently tilted her chin up with his free hand, forcing her to meet his eyes. "The bond doesn't create feelings from nothing. It amplifies what's already there, draws us together so we can find what we might have missed otherwise. But what you feel, Mira, that's real. That's yours." Before she could respond, a throat cleared behind them. Marcus stood at the edge of the terrace, his expression apologetic but urgent. "Alpha, the council is here. They're demanding to meet with you and the human." Kieran's jaw tightened, and Mira felt him tense. "Tell them I'll meet with them when I'm ready." "They've invoked their right to formal audience," Marcus said carefully. "Under pack law, you have to receive them." Something dangerous flickered in Kieran's eyes. "Fine. Give me 10 minutes." Marcus nodded and disappeared back into the house. Kieran turned back to Mira, frustration evident in every line of his body. "I'm sorry. The council. They are the elders of the pack, the ones who advise me on matters of law and tradition. They're—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Concerned about your presence here." "Because I'm human," Mira said. "Because they don't understand what you are to me yet. Because they're afraid of change, of breaking with tradition." He stood, pulling her up with him. "But I need you to know something before we face them. No matter what they say, no matter what they demand, you're under my protection. No one touches you, no one threatens you. You're safe here." "You keep saying that," Mira said. "But what if they're right to be concerned? What if bringing me here was a mistake?" Kieran's hands came up to frame her face, his touch achingly gentle despite the intensity in his eyes. "Meeting you could never be a mistake. Finding you, that was fate finally getting something right." Then, as if he couldn't help himself, he leaned down and pressed his forehead against hers. An intimate gesture that felt more profound than any kiss. Mira's eyes fluttered closed, and for just a moment, she let herself exist in this impossible space where she was safe, wanted, maybe even cherished. "Come on," Kieran said finally, straightening but keeping one hand on the small of her back. "Let's go show the council what fate chose for their Alpha King." As they walked back into the lodge, Mira couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking toward something that would change her forever. The mate bond thrummed between them like a living thing, and she realized with startling clarity that she didn't want to fight it anymore. She wanted to see where it would lead, even if it terrified her, especially because it did. Chapter 6. The Council's Challenge. The great room of the lodge had been transformed. What had seemed warm and inviting last night now felt like a courtroom. 5 elderly shifters sat in high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle, their amber eyes tracking Mira and Kieran as they entered. Elena stood off to one side, her expression carefully neutral, while Marcus positioned himself near the door like a sentinel. The air felt heavy with tension and something else, power. It rolled off these elders in waves, making Mira's skin prickle. Alpha Blackthorne, the center elder spoke, a man with silver hair and a face carved from granite. Thank you for granting us audience. Counselor Aldrich, Kieran replied, his voice cool and formal. His hand remained at Mira's back, a steady, grounding presence. Though we both know you gave me little choice. Aldrich's lips thinned. This is a matter that concerns the entire pack. When the Alpha King brings a human into our territory, into his home, it raises questions that must be addressed. Then ask your questions, Kieran said, but be careful how you phrase them. The woman beside me is under my personal protection. Is it true? This came from a woman on Aldrich's right, her eyes sharp and assessing. Is she your fated mate? The room went deathly silent, every eye fixed on Kieran, waiting. Yes, he said simply, with absolute conviction. Mira Ashford is my fated mate. The reaction was immediate. 2 of the council members exchanged shocked glances. Another, a younger man with dark hair streaked with gray, leaned forward with obvious interest. But Aldrich's expression remained carefully blank. A human mate, Aldrich said slowly. In 300 years of recorded pack history, there has never been a human fated to an alpha. Never. There is now, Kieran replied. This is unprecedented, the sharp-eyed woman continued. She cannot take the Luna position. She has no wolf, no connection to the pack bond. She would be a liability in times of conflict. Mira felt each word like a physical blow. She'd known she didn't belong here, but hearing it stated so baldly made her chest ache. Counselor Thessa, Kieran's voice dropped dangerously low. You forget yourself. The fated mate bond is sacred, written into our very nature by forces older than any of us. Are you suggesting I ignore what fate itself has decreed? I'm suggesting, Thessa said carefully, that perhaps fate has made an error, or that there are factors we don't yet understand. There is no error, Kieran said flatly. I've waited 33 years for this. My wolf recognizes her. Everything I am recognizes her. The younger counselor spoke up. With respect, Alpha, Counselor Thessa raises valid concerns. A human Luna would be vulnerable to our enemies. The Nightshade Pack has been testing our borders for months. If they learned you'd taken a human mate, then they would learn what happens to those who threaten what's mine, Kieran interrupted, and suddenly the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Power radiated from him, raw, primal, and utterly terrifying. I am Alpha King. My authority supersedes tradition, supersedes precedent. If fate has given me a human mate, then perhaps it's time our traditions evolved. Or perhaps, Aldrich said quietly, it's time we considered whether this bond is genuine. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Kieran went absolutely still beside Mira, his hand tensing against her back. Explain, he said, each word clipped and precise. Aldrich stood, his movements deliberate. There are old stories, legends really, about bonds that seem fated but are actually something else. Enchantments. Dark magic meant to manipulate, to control. You dare suggest I've been enchanted? Kieran's voice was deadly soft. I suggest, Aldrich said carefully, that it would be prudent to be certain. For your sake and the Pack's, a simple test would... No. The word cracked through the room like thunder. There will be no test, no interrogation, no questioning of something that every cell in my body knows to be true. Alpha, Aldrich began. I said no. Kieran stepped forward, and Mira watched in fascination as the 5 council members instinctively drew back. Do you know what I've been doing for the past 33 years? Waiting. Leading this pack alone while every other alpha around me found their mate and built their families. Watching my friends experience the bond while I wondered if fate had simply forgotten me. His voice grew rougher, more raw. I've made myself into a weapon for this pack. I've negotiated treaties, won territory, eliminated threats, all while feeling like half of me was missing. And now, when fate finally gives me what I've been searching for, you want me to doubt it? To question it? We only want to protect you, Thessa said. And for the first time, Mira heard genuine concern in her voice. You're the strongest alpha we've had in generations, Kieran. But that also makes you a target. If someone wanted to manipulate you, what better way than through a false mate bond? Mira's stomach twisted. She suddenly understood their concern. And worse, wondered if they might be right. What if this overwhelming connection she felt was manufactured? What if she was being used to hurt Kieran somehow? I need to speak, Mira said quietly. Every head turned toward her. Kieran's hand tightened on her back, protective. You don't have to... He started. Yes, I do. Mira stepped forward, her heart pounding but her voice steady. You're all acting like I'm some sort of prize or weapon or pawn. But I'm a person, and I have my own doubts about this. She looked up at Kieran, saw the pain that flashed across his face. Not because I don't feel the connection. I do. It terrifies me how much I feel it. But I don't know anything about your world, about magic or bonds or pack politics. She turned back to the council. So if there's a test that would prove whether this is real or not, I want to take it. Not because I think Kieran is wrong, but because I need to know for myself that what I'm feeling is real. That I'm choosing this, not being forced into it by some spell. The silence that followed was deafening. Mira, Kieran said, his voice rough with emotion. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me, she said, turning to face him fully. What is this test? Kieran looked at Aldrich with something close to hatred. The test requires her to shift. But I'm human, Mira said, confused. I can't shift, exactly, Aldrich said. True fated mates, even human ones, carry a dormant connection to their shifter partner's wolf. It's part of what makes the bond work. With the right ritual, that connection can be awakened enough to prove its existence. And if there's no connection, Mira asked, then the bond is false, Thessa said bluntly, created by outside forces rather than fate. And the ritual? Kieran demanded. Tell her what it actually involves, Aldrich. Tell her the risk. Aldrich met Mira's eyes. The awakening ritual is painful and dangerous for a human. It requires you to touch the essence of transformation, to feel what it means to shift without your body actually being able to complete it. Some humans have died from the shock, others... He paused. Others lose their minds. The human psyche isn't meant to comprehend what we are. Mira's blood ran cold, but she thought of the doubt in the council's eyes, of the questions that would follow her forever if she didn't do this. And she thought of Kieran, of the raw pain on his face at the suggestion that their bond might be false. I'll do it, she said. No, Kieran said immediately. Absolutely not. I won't risk you for their peace of mind. It's not for them, Mira said softly, reaching up to touch his face. It's for us, so we know. So there's no doubt. I don't have any doubt, he said fiercely. But I do, she admitted, and watched something in him break. Not about you, about me. About whether I'm strong enough for this. Whether I'm really what you need. Let me do this, Kieran. Let me prove, to myself and everyone else, that I'm choosing you with full knowledge of what that means. Kieran pulled her close, his forehead dropping to rest against hers once more. If anything happens to you, then you'll have your answer, she whispered. One way or another, he pulled back, his jaw set with grim determination. Fine, we'll do the ritual, but I'm staying with her through every second of it. That's not, Aldrich began. Not negotiable, Kieran cut him off. Those are my terms. Take them or leave them. Aldrich nodded slowly. Very well. We'll need time to prepare. The ritual must be performed at moonrise tomorrow night. As the council filed out, Mira felt the weight of what she'd agreed to settle over her like a shroud. Tomorrow night, she would either prove the bond was real, or discover that everything she'd felt for Kieran was nothing more than a lie. Chapter 7. Before the storm, the rest of the day passed in a strange, suspended tension. Kieran had retreated into himself after the council meeting, his expression dark and closed off. He'd shown Mira around the property, The sprawling gardens, the forest trails, the lake that sparkled in the afternoon sun. But he'd barely spoken, and he'd kept a careful distance between them. It was driving her crazy. By evening, Mira found herself alone in her room, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and gold. Tomorrow night. The ritual. She pressed her hand against her stomach, trying to calm the butterflies, or maybe they were wasps, that swarmed there. A knock at her door made her turn. "Come in." Kieran entered and Mira's breath caught. He'd changed into dark jeans and a simple black shirt, his hair still damp from a shower, but it was his eyes that captured her. They were filled with such raw emotion that she had to look away. "I need to talk to you," he said quietly. "Okay." Mira moved to sit on the edge of the bed, and after a moment's hesitation, Kieran joined her, leaving a careful foot of space between them. "I've been an ass today," he said bluntly. "Distant, cold, and you deserve better than that, especially now." "You're scared," Mira said. It wasn't a question. He laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "Terrified. I've faced down rival alphas, territorial disputes, threats to my pack. But the thought of tomorrow night, of you going through that ritual..." His hands clenched into fists on his thighs. "It makes me want to run. To take you somewhere far away where the council can't reach us." "Why don't you?" Mira asked. "You're the Alpha King. Who could stop you?" "You could," he said simply, finally meeting her eyes. "You want this test. You need it. And as much as it kills me, I understand why. He dragged a hand through his hair. "I've already lost so many people I loved, Mira. My parents, my sister. The thought of losing you before I even really have you." Mira closed the distance between them without thinking, taking his hand in hers. "Tell me about them. Your family." Kieran looked down at their joined hands, his thumb automatically moving to trace circles on her palm. "My father was Alpha before me. Strong, fair, loved by the pack. My mother was his fated mate, a fierce warrior in her own right. They were everything I thought a mated pair should be. What happened to them? A challenge from a rival pack. I was 21, still learning to control my alpha powers. They coordinated an attack during the full moon when our defenses were spread thin. My parents fought to protect the pack." His voice went rough. "They died doing what alphas do. Protecting their own, and your sister?" Mira asked gently. Pain flashed across his face. "Lyra. She was 19, 2 years younger than me. Beautiful, kind, full of life. She survived the attack that killed our parents, but something in her broke that night. A year later, He swallowed hard. She walked into the forest during winter and never came back. They found her body in the spring. Oh, Kieran." Mira squeezed his hand, her heart breaking for him. "So you see," he continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "I understand loss. I understand how quickly everything you love can be taken from you. That's why I've been so distant today, because I'm trying to prepare myself for tomorrow night. Trying to build walls so it won't destroy me if..." "Stop," Mira said firmly. She shifted to face him fully, both hands now holding his. "Look at me." He did, and the vulnerability in those amber eyes nearly undid her. "I'm scared too," she admitted. "I'm scared of the pain, of dying, of going insane. But you know what scares me more? The thought that this, what we have, might not be real. That these feelings I have for you are just some magical manipulation." She moved closer, until their knees touched. "Because I've never felt anything like this, Kieran. And if it's not real, if it's just a spell, then I need to know so I can grieve it and move on. But if it is real..." "If it is?" he prompted, hope flickering in his eyes. "Then I want everything," she whispered. "I want to know what it means to be your mate, to be part of your world, to maybe even love you, if you'll let me." Kieran made a sound low in his throat, part growl, part groan. His hands came up to cup her face, his touch achingly gentle. "Mira, I don't think you understand. I'm already halfway to loving you, maybe more than halfway. And that's after one day." "That's crazy," she breathed. "That's the mate bond," he corrected. "It doesn't create love from nothing, but it amplifies what's already there. It removes the barriers we usually put up, the defenses. It lets us see each other clearly, without all the games humans and shifters usually play." So you see me clearly? Mira asked. All my flaws, my damage, I see strength, Kieran interrupted. I see a woman who's survived more than most ever have to face. I see kindness that hasn't been killed by cruelty. I see beauty that has nothing to do with your face. Though, for the record, your face is stunning, and everything to do with who you are. Tears pricked at Mira's eyes. You barely know me. Then let me know you, he said. However long we have before tomorrow night, let me learn everything about you. And so she told him. Sitting there on the bed as darkness fell outside, Mira told him things she'd never told anyone. About her mother's final days, about the crushing loneliness after her father's death, about the small joys she'd found in her work as a seamstress, the satisfaction of creating something beautiful with her hands. Kieran listened to every word, his attention absolute, occasionally asking questions that showed he was truly hearing her, truly seeing her. I used to dream about having a little shop, Mira confessed, feeling foolish. Nothing fancy, just a place where I could design and create clothes for women who wanted something unique, something that made them feel beautiful. You'll have it, Kieran said with absolute conviction. When this is over, when you're ready, I'll help you build it. Here in the territory or anywhere you want. Kieran, I mean it, he insisted. Mate bond or no mate bond, you deserve to have your dreams, Mira. You deserve to have everything you've ever wanted. She looked at him, really looked at him. This powerful alpha king who could command with a word, who led an entire pack, who had seen and survived terrible loss. And she saw past all that to the man underneath, the one who'd lost his family too young, the one who'd waited decades for something he wasn't sure would ever come, the one who looked at her like she was his salvation. Can I ask you something? She said quietly. Anything. If the ritual proves the bond is real, what happens then? Kieran's expression grew serious. Then you have a choice to make. You can accept the bond fully, let it complete itself, which would mean becoming my mate in every way. Or you can walk away. The bond would remain, we'd always feel the pull, but you'd be free to live your own life. And if I accept it? Then we'd complete the mating ritual, he said carefully. It's intimate. It involves a claiming, a bite that would mark you as mine, bind our souls together completely. You'd be able to feel my emotions, sense when I'm in danger, and I'd feel yours. We'd be connected in a way that goes beyond the physical. A bite, Mira repeated, her eyes dropping to his mouth, to the teeth she knew could become something other than human. Yes. His voice had gone rough. On your neck at the junction where it meets your shoulder. It's permanent, Mira. Once done, it can't be undone. You'd bear my mark for the rest of your life. The thought should have frightened her. Instead, heat pooled low in her belly, and she felt her pulse quicken. Would it hurt? At first, Kieran admitted. But then, his eyes had darkened, his pupils dilating. Then it would feel like everything good you've ever experienced, multiplied by 1,000. The moment of claiming is... He stopped, jaw tight. We shouldn't talk about this now. Why not? Because I can smell your arousal, he said bluntly, and Mira's cheeks flamed. And my control is already hanging by a thread. If we keep talking about claiming and mating, I'm going to do something we're both not ready for. Mira knew she should be embarrassed, should pull back. Instead, she found herself leaning closer. What if I want you to lose control? Kieran groaned, his forehead dropping to rest against hers. Don't say things like that. Not when I'm trying to be honorable. Maybe I don't want you to be honorable right now, Mira whispered. Maybe I want to feel alive. Because tomorrow night I might... Don't, Kieran said roughly, pulling back to look at her. Don't finish that sentence. You're going to survive tomorrow. You're going to prove the bond is real. And then we're going to have all the time in the world. Promise me something, Mira said. Anything. If something goes wrong tomorrow, if I don't survive or I lose my mind or... She pressed her fingers against his lips when he tried to protest. If something goes wrong, promise me you won't blame yourself. Promise me you'll find a way to be happy again. Kieran pulled her hand away, but held it tight against his chest. I can't promise that. If I lose you, there is no happy again. There's only surviving. But I will promise you this. Nothing is going to happen to you tomorrow. I'll be with you every second, lending you my strength, my power. We'll face it together. Together, Mira repeated, and somehow, the word made everything seem less terrifying. They sat together as the last light faded from the sky, holding each other, neither willing to let go. Tomorrow would bring the ritual, the test, the truth. But tonight they had this moment, this connection, this impossible, beautiful, terrifying bond that felt more real than anything Mira had ever known. Whatever came tomorrow, at least she would face it knowing she'd felt this. Knowing she'd been seen, truly seen, by someone who looked at her like she was worth fighting for, even if it was only for one night. Chapter 8. The Awakening Ritual. The day of the ritual dawned cold and gray, as if the sky itself mourned what was to come. Mira spent the morning in a daze, Elena hovering nearby with quiet support, while Kieran attended to pack business he couldn't avoid. Every time Mira caught a glimpse of him through the windows, pacing, talking with Marcus, his expression carved from stone, her heart clenched. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Elena came to help her prepare. "The ritual requires you to wear white," Elena explained, laying out a simple white dress on the bed, a symbol of purity and truth. No jewelry, no adornments, just you. Mira's hands shook as she changed. The dress was soft cotton, falling to mid-calf, with long sleeves and a modest neckline. She looked like she was preparing for a baptism. Or a funeral. "How bad is it going to be?" she asked Elena as the older woman brushed her hair. Elena's hand stilled for a moment. "I won't lie to you, child. It will be the worst pain you've ever experienced. Your human body will try to shift but can't, and that conflict..." She resumed brushing, her touch gentle. "But if the bond is real, Kieran will be able to help you through it. His presence, his power, should anchor you to yourself. And if the bond isn't real, then there will be no anchor," Elena said quietly. "And the pain will consume you." A knock at the door interrupted them. Kieran entered, dressed all in black jeans, black shirt, looking like a dark angel come to guide her through hell. His eyes found hers immediately, and she saw her own fear reflected back at her. "It's time," he said softly. The ritual site was in a clearing deep in the forest, surrounded by ancient standing stones that hummed with power. The council waited there, along with Marcus and a handful of other pack members. Torches had been lit in a circle, casting dancing shadows as dusk settled over the land. In the center of the circle was a flat stone altar, and Mira's stomach dropped when she saw it. "You'll lie there," Aldrich explained as they approached. "The Alpha will stand at your head, maintaining physical contact throughout. We'll invoke the old magic, and it will seek the truth of your bond." "How long does it last?" Mira asked, proud that her voice didn't shake. "As long as it takes," Thessa said. "Minutes, hours. It depends on how deeply buried the connection is." Kieran's hand found Mira's, squeezing tight. "I'll be with you the entire time," he murmured. "Focus on my voice, on my touch. Don't let go." As the last light faded from the sky and the first stars appeared, Mira lay down on the stone altar. It was cold against her back, sending shivers through her body. Kieran moved to stand at her head, his hands coming to rest on her shoulders, warm and solid. The council formed a circle around them, beginning to chant in a language Mira didn't recognize. The words were old, primal, sending vibrations through the air itself. "Remember?" Kieran said, leaning down so only she could hear. "I'm here. I've got you. Nothing will take you from me." The chanting grew louder, and Mira felt something begin to build in the air. A pressure, a weight, like the atmosphere before a lightning strike. The torches flared brighter, their flames turning an unnatural silver blue. Then the magic hit. Pain exploded through Mira's body like she'd been struck by lightning. Every nerve ending fired at once, every muscle seizing. She tried to scream, but her throat locked, trapping the sound inside. "Breathe." Kieran's voice cut through the agony. "Mira, breathe. Look at me." She forced her eyes open and found his amber gaze locked on hers. The pain continued, waves of it crashing through her, but his eyes became her anchor point. "That's it," he encouraged. "Stay with me." The magic delved deeper, and Mira felt it searching inside her, probing, examining, looking for something. It felt like her very soul was being torn apart and reassembled. Her bones ached, her skin burned, and underneath it all was a terrible, impossible urge to change, to shift, to become something her body could never be. "I can't," she gasped. "Kieran, I can't." "Yes, you can," he said fiercely. His hands tightened on her shoulders, and suddenly she felt something else. A warmth spreading from where he touched her, flowing into her body like liquid gold. His power, his strength feeding into her. The pain intensified, but now it had a focus. The magic was pulling at something deep inside her, something she hadn't known existed. It felt like a thread, gossamer thin, but impossibly strong, connecting her to Kieran. "I feel it," Kieran breathed, wonder in his voice. "Mira, I can feel your soul reaching for mine." The thread brightened, strengthened, and suddenly Mira could feel him, not just his hands on her shoulders, but his emotions, his fear, his fierce protective love, his absolute certainty in their bond. It flooded through her like a dam breaking, overwhelming and perfect and right. But the magic wasn't satisfied yet. It pulled harder, demanding more proof, and the pain escalated beyond anything Mira had thought possible. She felt her mind beginning to fracture, reality splintering at the edges. "No," Kieran snarled, and suddenly he was there, not just his hands, but his presence. His consciousness flooding the bond between them. "You don't get to take her. She's mine. Mine." Power erupted from him. Pure alpha dominance that made the air crackle and the stones around them vibrate. The council's chanting faltered, several of them staggering back from the force of it. Kieran leaned down, his forehead pressing against hers, and spoke directly into her mind. "I'm here, little mate. Hold on to me. Let me carry you through this." Mira grabbed onto that mental presence like a lifeline. She could feel him now, feel the edges of his consciousness, the vast power he contained, the way his wolf prowled just beneath his skin, snarling at the magic that dared hurt its mate. The magic made one final surge, one last attempt to find falsehood in their bond. But there was nothing false to find. The connection between them blazed like the sun, pure, true, undeniable. Faded. The pain suddenly cut off, leaving Mira gasping on the stone altar. The torches returned to their normal orange glow. The council's chanting died away. Silence fell over the clearing. "It's real," Aldrich said, his voice filled with awe. "The bond is genuine. Fated by the old powers themselves." Mira barely heard him. She was too focused on Kieran, who had collapsed to his knees beside the altar, his hands still gripping her shoulders like he'd never let go. Their eyes met, and she saw tears tracking down his face. "You did it," he said hoarsely. "You survived. You magnificent, brave, impossible woman." Mira tried to sit up, but her body wouldn't cooperate. Every muscle felt like jelly, her mind foggy with exhaustion. Kieran scooped her up immediately, cradling her against his chest. "Take her back to the lodge," Elena said, appearing at his side. "She needs rest and time to recover." But Thessa stepped forward, her expression troubled. "There's something else. Something unusual." Kieran's arms tightened around Mira protectively. "What?" "The bond," Thessa said slowly. "It's stronger than it should be at this stage. Before completion, before claiming, the connection should be a whisper. But this," she gestured between them, "this is already halfway to a full mate bond. I've never seen anything like it." "What does that mean?" Mira managed to ask, her voice weak. Aldrich and Thessa exchanged glances. "It means," Aldrich said carefully, "that your souls are already merging. The claiming will complete it, yes, but even without it, you're bound to each other in ways that go beyond normal fated mates." "Is that dangerous?" Kieran demanded. "No," Thessa said, "but it's unprecedented. It suggests that your bond is special, possibly prophetic." "Prophetic how?" Mira asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. "That," Aldrich said, "remains to be seen. But the old magic wouldn't create such a powerful bond without reason. You two are meant for something important." Kieran didn't wait to hear more. He turned and started carrying Mira back toward the lodge, Marcus falling into step beside them. "She needs food, water, and rest," Elena called after them. "I'll prepare everything." As they walked through the forest, Mira rested her head against Kieran's chest, listening to his heartbeat. She could still feel him there, in her mind, in her soul. The bond hummed between them like a living thing, warm and bright and real. "It was real," she whispered. "It was always real," Kieran replied, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "From the first moment I saw you, it was always real. What happens now?" Kieran looked down at her, and in his amber eyes she saw heat, possession, and something that looked like devotion. "Now you recover, and then," he paused, "then we decide what comes next. Together." "Together," Mira echoed. And despite the exhaustion pulling at her, despite the lingering ache in every muscle, she smiled. They had proven the bond was real. Now came the hard part, figuring out what to do with it, and whether she was brave enough to let it consume her completely. Chapter 9. The breaking point Mira woke to find herself back in her room, though she had no memory of getting there. The curtains were drawn against the morning light, and someone, Elena, probably, had changed her into soft sleeping clothes. Every muscle in her body ached, a deep, bone-weary exhaustion that made even breathing feel like effort. But underneath the physical pain was something else. A warmth in her chest, a constant awareness of another presence hovering at the edges of her consciousness. Kieran. She could feel him nearby, sense his concern like it was her own. The door opened quietly, and he appeared as if summoned by her thoughts. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, hair disheveled, still wearing the same clothes from last night. He'd clearly been awake all night watching over her. "You're awake," he said, relief flooding his features. He crossed to the bed quickly, sitting on the edge and reaching for her hand. "How do you feel?" "Like I was torn apart and put back together wrong," Mira admitted. "But alive." "Thank God," he breathed, bringing her hand to his lips. The gesture was tender, intimate, and sent warmth spreading through her chest, though she couldn't tell if it was her emotion or his bleeding through their new connection. "Have you slept at all?" she asked. "No, I couldn't. I needed to make sure you were okay." His thumb traced circles on her palm, that same unconscious gesture he always did. "Elena said the exhaustion is normal. Your body went through something it was never meant to experience. You'll need a few days to fully recover." Mira tried to sit up, and Kieran immediately moved to help her, propping pillows behind her back. The casual way he cared for her made her heart squeeze. "I can feel you," she said quietly. "Not just physically, I can sense your emotions. Your worry, your relief." Kieran nodded. "The bond is open now. Not complete, but active. We'll be able to feel each other's stronger emotions, especially when we're close." His expression grew concerned. "Is it overwhelming? Some new mates find it intrusive at first." "No," Mira said, considering. "It's strange but not bad. It's actually comforting to know I'm not alone in my head anymore." Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. "You'll never be alone again. I promise you that." A knock at the door interrupted them. Elena entered carrying a tray laden with food. Eggs, toast, fruit, and what smelled like herbal tea. "The girl needs to eat," Elena said firmly, setting the tray across Mira's lap. "You can't heal on an empty stomach." She turned to Kieran with a stern look. "And you need to sleep, Alpha. You're no good to her if you collapse from exhaustion." "I'm fine," Kieran said automatically. "You're not," Mira said, surprising herself. Through the bond, she could feel how drained he was, not just from staying awake, but from the massive amount of power he'd channeled into her during the ritual. "Elena's right. You need rest." Kieran looked like he wanted to argue, but Marcus appeared in the doorway. "Alpha, the Nightshade Pack's messengers are at the border. They're requesting an audience." Every muscle in Kieran's body tensed. "Now they choose now to make their move?" "They may have heard about the ritual," Marcus said carefully. "Word travels fast among the packs." Mira felt fear spike through their bond. Not Kieran's fear, but hers. The Nightshade Pack, the ones the council had mentioned as enemies. "It's fine," Kieran said immediately, his hand finding hers again. They won't get anywhere near you. I'll meet them at the border with Marcus and a full guard. They could be testing you, Elena said, her expression troubled. Seeing if the human mate makes you vulnerable? Then they'll learn exactly how wrong they are, Kieran said, his voice dropping into that alpha tone that brooked no argument. He looked at Mira, conflict clear in his eyes. I have to go, but I'll have guards posted outside your door, and Elena will stay with you. I'll be fine, Mira assured him, though the thought of him leaving made her chest tight. Go handle your pack business. Kieran leaned in, pressing his forehead to hers in that gesture that was becoming familiar and cherished. I'll be back as soon as I can, and Mira, if you need me, if anything feels wrong, just call for me. Through the bond. I'll hear you. Then he was gone, Marcus at his heels, leaving Mira alone with Elena and a breakfast she suddenly didn't have much appetite for. Eat anyway, Elena said, reading her expression. You need your strength. Mira picked at the food, managing a few bites, but her mind was elsewhere. Through the bond, she could feel Kieran moving away, the connection stretching but not breaking. It was disorienting and fascinating all at once. What's the Nightshade Pack? She asked Elena. The older woman settled into the chair by the fireplace, her expression grave. A rival pack to the north. Their alpha, Damien Ashcroft, has been challenging Kieran's authority for years. He believes the Northern Territories should be his. Ashcroft, Mira repeated, the name sounding familiar. Yes, distant relation to the Ashcroft family from the city. The shifter bloodlines sometimes intermarry with powerful human families. Elena paused. Damien is dangerous, Mira, ruthless, and if he's heard that Kieran has taken a human mate, he'll see me as a weakness, Mira finished. Exactly. The fear that had been simmering in Mira's gut solidified into cold certainty. She'd survived the ritual, proven the bond was real, but now she might become a liability, a target that Kieran's enemies could use against him. I can't be the reason he gets hurt, she said quietly. Elena's eyes softened. Child, you're not a reason for anything. You're his mate. His other half? That makes you his greatest strength, not his weakness. The council doesn't see it that way. Thessa said I'd be vulnerable in conflict. Thessa is old and set in her ways, Elena said dismissively. She doesn't understand that the mate bond makes an alpha stronger, not weaker. When Kieran has something, someone to protect, to fight for, he becomes unstoppable. She leaned forward. Trust me, I knew his parents. His father was a good alpha, but he became legendary when he found his mate. Love doesn't weaken us, Mira. It gives us something worth fighting for. Mira wanted to believe her, but through the bond, she could feel Kieran's tension increasing, could sense danger hovering at the edges of his consciousness. Hours passed. Elena helped Mira bathe and dress in comfortable clothes, soft leggings and an oversized sweater. The guards outside her door changed shifts. The sun climbed higher in the sky, and through it all, Mira felt Kieran's growing agitation like a storm building on the horizon. Then, suddenly pain. It lanced through the bond like a knife. Sharp and hot, and Mira gasped, doubling over. What is it? Elena demanded, rushing to her side. Kieran, Mira gasped. Something's wrong. The pain intensified, and with it came images. Flashes of violence, of wolves snarling, of blood on snow. The Nightshade Pack hadn't come to talk. They'd come to attack. Without thinking, Mira stood, pushing past Elena toward the door. You can't go out there, Elena protested. You're still recovering. And if there's a fight... He needs me, Mira said, and she knew it was true. Could feel it through the bond. Kieran's desperate need for her. His fear not for himself but for her safety. His rage at being pulled away from her side when she was vulnerable. The guards outside her door immediately blocked her path. Luna, you need to stay inside. Alpha's orders. Your Alpha is in trouble, Mira said, with an authority she didn't know she possessed. Let me through. They exchanged glances, uncertainty clear on their faces. Through the bond, another spike of pain, and Mira felt her knees buckle. Marcus appeared at the top of the stairs, blood on his shirt, his expression grim. Let her through. If anyone can stop this, it's her. The guard stepped aside, and Mira followed Marcus down the stairs and out into the cold morning air. What she saw made her blood run cold. The front lawn had become a battlefield. Wolves, massive, snarling wolves, circled and snapped at each other. And in the center, 2 wolves larger than all the rest faced off. One was Kieran, midnight black with amber eyes, radiating power and fury. The other was silver gray with eyes like ice, Damien Ashcroft, Alpha of the Nightshade Pack. They were seconds from tearing each other apart. "Kieran!" Mira screamed, her voice breaking across the chaos. The black wolf's head whipped toward her, and in that moment of distraction, Damien struck. Mira watched in horror as the silver wolf's jaws closed around Kieran's throat, and something inside her, something primal and ancient and absolutely terrifying, woke up and roared. Chapter 10. The Luna's power erupted from Mira like a shockwave. It wasn't physical. She didn't transform, didn't shift, but every wolf on the battlefield felt it. A command that bypassed their conscious minds and spoke directly to their instincts. The silver wolf's jaws released Kieran's throat immediately, and both alphas stumbled backward, their eyes locked on the small human woman standing at the lodge entrance. Mira didn't understand what was happening to her. Energy coursed through her veins like liquid lightning, hot and fierce and utterly foreign. The bond between her and Kieran blazed so brightly she could almost see it, a golden thread connecting their souls. "Stop," she commanded, and her voice carried across the battlefield with unnatural authority. Every wolf froze. Even Damien, the rival alpha, found himself unable to move, his ice-blue eyes wide with shock. Marcus appeared at Mira's side, steadying her as her knees threatened to give out. "Luna," he breathed, awe in his voice. "You're channeling alpha power through the bond. What?" Mira gasped, the energy starting to fade as quickly as it had come, leaving her shaking. But it had been enough. Kieran, blood streaming from the wounds on his throat, shifted back to human form, his body flowing from wolf to man in a heartbeat. He stood naked and magnificent in the morning light, uncaring of his vulnerability, his entire focus on Mira. "Get her inside," he ordered Marcus, his voice rough. "Now!" Damien shifted as well, his silver-gray hair matching his wolf's coat, his muscular body covered in tactical clothing unlike Kieran's complete nudity. He laughed, a cold, calculating sound. "So the rumors are true. The great Kieran Blackthorne has bound himself to a human." His ice-blue eyes fixed on Mira with predatory interest. "A human who just commanded my wolves. Fascinating." "Touch her and I'll rip out your throat," Kieran snarled, moving to place himself between Mira and Damien despite his injuries. "I have no interest in harming her," Damien said, though his smile suggested otherwise. "I came here to discuss territory disputes and you responded with aggression. But this," he gestured at the frozen wolves, at Mira, "this changes things. A human mate who can wield alpha authority. That's unprecedented. Prophetic, even." Elena had appeared with a robe, which Kieran shrugged into impatiently, never taking his eyes off Damien. "You attacked my sentries at the border. Don't pretend this was a peaceful visit." "A misunderstanding," Damien said smoothly. "Your guards were overzealous. I merely defended myself." Through the bond, Mira felt Kieran's fury, his desire to launch himself at Damien and finish what they'd started. But she also felt his restraint, held in place only by concern for her safety. "This isn't over, Blackthorne," Damien continued, "but I'll grant you a reprieve. For now." His eyes slid back to Mira, and she felt ice slide down her spine. "I look forward to learning more about your extraordinary mate. Perhaps at the next Council of Alphas." "Get off my territory," Kieran growled, "before I forget the laws of hospitality." Damien smiled that cold smile again, shifted back to his wolf form, and loped away into the forest, his pack following. Within moments, they disappeared into the trees like ghosts. The moment they were gone, Kieran turned to Mira, and the carefully controlled alpha facade crumbled. "You shouldn't have come out here. You could have been killed. If Damien had decided to—" "You were dying," Mira interrupted, her voice shaking. "I felt it through the bond. I felt your pain, your fear. I couldn't just stay inside while... She didn't get to finish. Kieran crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and crushed her against his chest, his face buried in her hair. Through the bond, she felt everything. His terror at seeing her in danger, his awe at what she'd done, his overwhelming relief that she was safe. "Don't ever do that again," he said roughly. "Don't ever risk yourself for me." "That's not how this works," Mira said, her arms wrapping around him despite the blood staining his robe. "You don't get to protect me while refusing to let me protect you." She felt his chest rumble with something between a laugh and a sob. "You magnificent, impossible woman. Alpha," Elena said gently. "Your wounds need tending, and the Luna needs to rest before she collapses." Only then did Mira realize how badly Kieran was injured. The wounds on his throat were deep, still bleeding sluggishly. There were gashes on his shoulder and flank, claw marks that looked savage. "You're hurt," she said, pulling back to look at him properly. Fresh fear spiked through her. "Kieran, I'll heal," he assured her. "Shifters heal fast. These will be gone by tomorrow, but inside." "Both of you," Elena commanded using her own authority. "Now." They let Elena herd them back into the lodge, where the rest of the household staff was already preparing medical supplies. Marcus appeared, now back in human form and fully clothed, his expression grim. "The Nightshade wolves are gone, but they left markers at the border. A challenge." He looked at Kieran. "Damien isn't going to let this go, not after what he saw." "I know," Kieran said. He winced as Elena began cleaning his wounds, but his hand never left Mira's. "Call the council. We need to discuss what happened here." "What did happen?" Mira asked. "That power I don't understand. I'm human. I shouldn't be able to do whatever that was." Elena and Marcus exchanged significant looks. It was Aldrich who answered, appearing in the doorway with Thessa and the rest of the council. "You channeled your mate's alpha authority through the bond," Aldrich explained, his expression grave. "It's theoretically possible, mentioned in the oldest texts, but never documented in living memory. A Luna, particularly one with an unusually strong bond, can sometimes act as a conduit for her alpha's power." "But she's untrained," Thessa protested, unaware of how to control it. "She could have hurt herself, burned out the bond entirely." "She saved Kieran's life," Marcus said firmly, "and stopped a war from breaking out on our doorstep." "She also revealed a vulnerability," Aldrich said. "Now Damien knows that the bond between them is powerful enough to be channeled. He'll try to exploit that." "How?" Mira asked, dread pooling in her stomach. "By targeting you directly," Thessa said bluntly. "If he can hurt you, he hurts Kieran through the bond. If he can capture you, he can control Kieran. You've become the Alpha King's greatest weakness. And his greatest strength," Elena added firmly. "Don't forget that part." Kieran stood abruptly, swaying slightly, but radiating authority despite his injuries. "Enough. Mira has been through hell in the past few days. She doesn't need you listing all the ways she's now in danger because of me." "Kieran," Aldrich began. "I said enough." The alpha command in his voice made everyone in the room tense. "We'll discuss this later. Right now my mate needs rest, and frankly, so do I." The council members bowed their heads in submission and filed out. Elena finished bandaging Kieran's wounds, giving Mira pointed instructions about watch for infection, despite insisting shifters healed fast. And then she too left, leaving them finally alone. Kieran sagged into a chair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. Mira knelt beside him, taking his hand. "Tell me the truth," she said quietly. "How bad is this? What I did today, does it make things worse?" Kieran was quiet for a long moment, his thumb tracing those familiar circles on her palm. "Yes and no. Damien now knows our bond is powerful, which makes you a target. But he also knows that you can wield power, that you're not helpless. That might make him think twice. Or it might make him more determined," Mira said. "Possibly." Kieran lifted her hand to his lips. "But Mira, what you did today, stopping that fight, you prevented a slaughter. If Damien and I had continued, people would have died. My pack, his pack. You saved lives." "I didn't know what I was doing," she admitted. "I just felt you in danger, and something inside me reacted." That's the mate bond, Kieran said softly. It's designed to protect, to strengthen. When one mate is threatened, the other can sometimes access power they didn't know they had. He pulled her up to sit in his lap, careful of his injuries. You're not just my mate, Mira. You're my Luna, my equal, my partner in leading this pack. I don't know how to be a Luna, Mira whispered against his chest. You'll learn. We'll learn together. He pressed a kiss to her forehead. But first, we both need sleep. Real sleep. Not me watching over you while you rest. Mira felt the exhaustion pulling at her, the adrenaline finally fading and leaving her wrung out. Stay with me? She asked. Always, Kieran promised. They made their way upstairs together, leaning on each other, two wounded souls finding strength in their connection. In Mira's room, Kieran lay down on the bed, still in his blood-stained robe, too tired to care. Mira curled up beside him, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Through the bond, she felt his contentment, his peace at having her close, his absolute certainty that she belonged here with him. Kieran? She murmured, sleep already claiming her. I think I'm falling in love with you. His arms tightened around her. I know I'm already in love with you. And surrounded by warmth and safety and the golden glow of their bond, Mira finally let herself fall asleep in the arms of her fated mate.